Angel's going to be here tonight?
I don't know. I've been trying to get hold of him. He owes me something.
Okay. Is it money?
No, he owes me a poster. I'm going to say something about that when you give me a break.
Okay. All right. Well, welcome everybody. I think there's a sign-up sheet going around, but maybe we should kind of just have a round of introductions. I think most of us know each other, but I'm Doug Goodin.
Dave Cromer, treasurer on the board.
Sanford Comrades.
Ed Warner.
Wes Giles.
Janelle Bergard.
Jeff Goodman.
Martin Jacobson.
Russell Valentine.
And Martin, you and I talked at the last public night. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah. So welcome. Glad to see
Yes,
you here. Always good to see a new face. Okay, so as far as kind of news and announcements go, just to kind of remind ourselves here, there's a public night scheduled for October 7th. I think that's a week from Saturday, right? Of course, that's always weather permitting. That'll be scheduled at Far Point. One thing to note here, we're getting into the fall, and that means the general meeting schedule changes a little bit. So the general meeting in November, note, is earlier than it usually is. Normally it's the fourth Thursday of the month. In this case, because of accommodating the Thanksgiving holiday period, it's a little earlier than that, so it's scheduled for November 16th. And then, of course, there is no general meeting in December. There's the party, which we'll talk about here in just a second. But anyway, so this is kind of what's coming up. Hi. Hey, we got a sign-up sheet going around here, so please come on in and have a seat. Again, just wanted to kind of remind the folks that just came in that the meeting schedule changes a little bit over the next couple of months. The November meeting takes place a little bit earlier than it typically does. Okay. Jan, you wanted to say something about something.
Something about something.
Remind me in a minute. No, this is about the solar eclipse. The annular eclipse is coming up 2 weeks from Saturday. And Angel is supposed to be making a poster. I've contacted a group and to let them know about the eclipse, and we're kind of in their backyard. It's called USD 450, Shining Heights School District, and that includes, I don't think it's all the way around the entire. And Angel's going to get me a little poster I could send them if they wanted. But anyway, we have arranged to have the parking lot at the swim beach. They're not using that now. So it's a wide open area where we're going to be. It's got a real nice view to the east, straight up, so we shouldn't have any trees or anything like that. What we're tentatively planning to do right now is we'll have 2 large tables. We'll have at least 1 solar telescope with a filter, and then the telescope sits on the box that sits on the table. If you've ever seen those, kids can use those a little safer than the other ones. And we'll also, well, really, there's not like glass in the things. And then what else? There will be, I'm going to plan on having, some things that they can look at on the tables, images of the sun, how these things work, dimensions, all this other kind of stuff. And there's a real quick little demo on why can the little bitty moon block out the whole big sun, that kind of thing. And so what a lot of it's going to be is just having people come in and talk to them and, let them look at the scope, and then we'd stay around. And it's just going to be really just a very real, just kind of an open. As they come in, there's plenty of parking for them there. So what we need really is some help. We're going to have 2 tables, and I've got some chairs that I'll bring along. I'll probably have a cooler with some ice water and whatnot. And it's scheduled to start at 9:30. The eclipse itself isn't till later, but I figure that gives people a little time to come and go and whatnot. We can get set up. And then we said we'd close at 2. I suspect it'll be earlier than that, because the eclipse will be over, but you never know. You just never know. And so if we can pack up early and leave, that would be fine. But what we really need is just some people to be there. And even if you could just be there for a little while. Of course, the big thing is, what if it's cloudy and then there'll be a cancellation? We'll put that out on the website. And if you were here for the total eclipse a few years back, there were 2 cloudy areas, one in South Carolina and one right for us. But, I mean, some of us were out there and the experience was still amazing. You could see the solar, the shadow coming right through the clouds. And the horses went to the barns and the cricket, it was really cool.
Yeah.
But, and this will be annular. For us, it's somewhere between 60 and 70% occlusion. And it's kind of going to come in from the side a little bit because of the alignment. And so it'll still be enough that you can see the difference on the sun. And hopefully we'll have some sunspots. If we can see those are always really cool to show people. So come out yourselves if you're able to help at all, even for a short time. Please send in a note to probably just the note place sent it for us. That's still working on the website, Russ, by the way.
What?
The notification. Everything else is breaking, having to do with computers and stuff in this group, so I just wanted to ask.
Which notification?
Well, just so if they wanted to contact us,
Oh, yeah. It just
Yeah.
goes, to me.
yeah, it just goes to, and then Russ would send it to me and whatever. But anyway, it can be a really fun thing. And if nothing else, you get to do some real life astronomy. And if it's cloudy, then you can go out and burn effigies or do whatever. Cloud gods, because some of us do. So anyway, but I did want to get that out 2 weeks from now. If you can help at all, please let us know, because we need some help with that. And as I said, I'm hoping that we'll get some kids out there, because those are the ones that grow into astronomers.
And I think Antonio has gotten all the permitting and everything done for
Yes,
that, right?
he took care of the permits. He's also bringing out the tables.
I think,
And
yeah.
actually, he offered to pay for the permits, so another member, but anyway.
Good with him.
It's basically, they want to have somebody there to take care of parking.
Right.
I don't think that's going to be an issue, but it's around there. And I've been out there, and the parking lot's kind of lower by the lake, and then it comes up. But right there, near the entrance, you've just got a really clear view. There is one telephone pole there, but it's far enough that way it shouldn't be a problem. So I've been out there and kind of scouting what we're looking with. It should be a real nice place for it. So if you'd like to help, please let us know. If not, just come on out and do a no rain dance before it happens. That's it. Thank you.
Burn a little sage or something. I think Angel had gotten in touch with the TV studio
Mhm.
here, which I don't know if we've heard anything more about that.
Well, yeah, he said that they had a time for it, but I don't know that anybody was going to be able to be there.
What time was
like
it?
today.
I'd have to look at his
So,
emails.
The last one I saw was Friday the 13th. Was one of the days. Is that no longer it?
I honestly don't remember. My brain is dead.
Because if it's Friday the 13th, I could probably do it, because my Fridays are actually fairly flexible. Always fun to have a companion, so
Mhm.
anybody else
Well,
wants to make
if you didn't see it, we had one just about general astronomy stuff. Well, what was that?
It's like in March, I
Month and a
think.
half, right, whatever. And Angel was there, and so was Doug. And Doug is a professional communicator as a college professor, and I thought it was just a really good job. Plus, he looks distinguished and looks like he knows what I'm doing, what he's doing. That's why I don't do it, because I normally don't do it.
Well,
But it was very nice. It was really, really nicely done. They're pretty good about that. Angel does have some contacts on Channel 13, so.
I mentioned it to Laura, and she said, last time you needed a haircut, make sure you get a haircut.
Oh,
So-
you mean your wife? That
Yeah.
one? Yeah, that's right.
So I guess I'm
Don't do it.
schedule for a haircut. But,
Haircut wouldn't
College
be in
professors
the-
tend to have longer
Brush it
hair.
all over their face.
well, my system is when I look down, I can see my hair is too long. But anyway, so the Eclipse events, is there any questions or anything about that? We can always use help. I'm not sure. I think my mother-in-law is coming that weekend, and I'm not sure what that's going to leave me which is good. I mean, she's a wonderful person to have visit. So, but I'm not sure. Maybe we can get everybody over there. Get the whole family over there.
Yeah, that would be good.
But we could definitely use some help out there.
Yeah, like I said, if we do have to cancel for clouds, we'll just put it on the website.
Let's see. Anything else that is just sort of general club business? Do we need to say anything about Farpoint and that goings on out there?
No.
No, okay.
Nothing's
Some of it
developed.
is secret because we don't.
Less
Does
said to
everybody
people.
know what
know about
happened
security system.
out there?
Hmm?
With that they cut the internet, so we have to have internet out there for a long time, and probably won't, I think.
Yeah, that's turned into obviously a
Still working on it.
frustrating
I
mess.
know.
But
There, and they were, last time I was out there, you could see where they were built, it's starting to build up a little bit, and they're gonna knock out one particularly nicely view of mine, it's gonna be in the way to the southeast, but there's still plenty of sky apart from it, so hopefully we'll get this all worked out. When does baseball season start?
Spring?
This
baseball
spring,
season?
I was out there today. They got the baseball and softball fields in, and they're putting the fences in over it.
Okay, cool, but I mean, the season, does that start in March?
The seasons is after Christmas, spring.
Okay,
Are they gonna
I know
use
that-
those fields in the summer too? I know there was some talk of
The
that.
plan is, at least starting off, it's just for school,
Okay,
not for community.
all right.
if it does go to community, we're screwed, because they wanna do it all the time.
Well, you know,
One
I
of the
don't
biggest
know.
issues, just till, having dealt with something similar not too long ago, is that, it's liability all the time. You know, there's so many lawyers that, you know, you don't want somebody to lose. Yeah, I mean, that's why we had to put a fee down just out like in the public parks. You know, but they, you know, they don't wanna, I won't go into Shakespeare, Henry VI. Yeah, and it's, just for the record, they did need a ball field. My grandson played Mission Valley last year. And he said it was like playing in his own backyard with the bumps and the grasses and stuff like that. So it just, we hope we can, you know, work out something so we have a mutually acceptable fall season. And then break anything else.
You have a question, or would you comment?
My agenda for being here tonight.
Oh, yes, please, go ahead.
Yes.
Okay. Again, my name is Martin Jacobson, and the farm right to the west of the Mission Valley School
Mhm.
is my son and Sherry, Ted and Sherry Jacobson. Sherry's a teacher at the school there. My son's a teacher here in Topeka. I've been wintering in Kansas for the last 10 years, and I finally made the move. And my wife's dog decided that it wanted to go to school. And so if you see a black dog around Far Point, throw a rock at it and tell it to go home. And
The dogs always get over at the school. I was principal there, and they'd often show up, not just the black one.
so I've been working to put an electric fence in and to keep the dog away. And that's how I came across Doug and
Okay.
the meeting. Previously, I was employed up in South Dakota for Lutheran Social Services, and we ran numerous children and youth programs, one of which was a mentoring program. And I couldn't help think about the talent that sits around this table, and also the gray hair that sits around this table. And I'm thinking to myself, this might be a group that would entertain the idea of having children coming in, perhaps on an individual basis. You could mentor them one-on-one, you could mentor a group. The options are wide open. And so my agenda is whatever I can do to facilitate that. And what I've done so far is, I talked to Doug, and there haven't been tours out there recently.
No, we really don't do tours per se at
Okay.
the observatory. We have the open house public nights where members of the public are invited out.
Okay.
There's also club events out there, club nights.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, I mean, it's kind of a working facility in a lot of ways, and
Mhm.
so we don't really do tours per
Okay.
se. Although I guess we do have kind of special groups sometimes,
Yes,
right?
we do. We have like school groups, so we've had some civic groups and things that can come out, you know, that will range a night. We always have to worry about the weather.
Uh-huh.
And that's why we haven't had, the last several public nights have been clouded out.
Okay.
But yeah, we have that, and I know we've got one school group that's been coming out there for something like 12 years straight. Well, except for
Wow.
COVID.
What school is that?
It's Parabel here
Oh,
in
okay.
town. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're third graders, that's their main thing. But this year, because of everything going on, we'll probably do it in the spring. Sometimes, you just get clouded out, so it has to move to the spring. We're always, under those things.
One thing
But
that
they come out, and we've had some other schools that come out too.
One thing that I learned with the mentoring program that we had up in Sioux Falls, I mean, we started off with, like 50 people, and now there's like over 1,500 people that go into the public schools, a number of like 12 different schools, and meet with kids. Now, I'm not suggesting that you go in and meet with kids, but I'm saying that you do have some expertise, and it would be wonderful if that could be shared in some kind of mechanism. To date, all I've done is I've talked to Randy Wild, the principal, and he's, and I've also talked to my granddaughters who play softball. And their suggestion was that Mr. Hancock, the guidance counselor there, puts together career days or career presentations where kids actually sign up. And so you have a willing group, willing to listen to what you have to say and to be able to present during the class. And from there, if you want to develop further, you could launch into, kids membership, et cetera, et cetera. It's totally up to you. And, I mentioned how the program grew in Sioux Falls, and I can see the program growing here. You just mentioned another school that's very interested, and we have 329 Alma, or right around the corner.
Right somewhere.
Yeah, and Shawnee. I mean, there's lots of kids around here, and I'm sure some of them will be interested in. I keep harassing my granddaughter that she should become an astro farmer.
Yes, yes.
Or an astro miner. There's careers there and that we don't know about yet. So you can make your decision and what you would like to do. If you want to take the next step, I think, Doug, you have my email address?
I do.
Telephone number. And what I would need is somebody to step forward and say, this is all the wonderful things that we can do, so that I could advertise it. The second thing would be to set up, I would think, a meeting with those kids that would be interested. Once we give them the information, and then they could sign up and they could attend a presentation. And then once you get them there, it's your job to put the hooks in them.
Yeah, we can usually, that's one thing I do, is I get them pretty well hooked once I talk to them. Another thing I do is I go out to schools. And there's one in Manhattan I've gone to for 20 years straight, over 20 years. They're the ones that started calling me the Star Lady. And the librarians have said that by the next day, every book in that library about stars is checked out.
Really?
And it's been like that for years. Because, of course, I act like an idiot up there, and they always like to see an adult acting like an idiot.
They got to find out whether the stuff she said is true.
Well, yeah, and, there's just stories you can hear forever and ever. One of the things, that I would love to do that, but the problem we always run into is, this is a small club. It's a matter of like staffing.
Yeah, what you're asking is really different than what we're telling you that we have done. We only might have a school come out for a couple of hours in the evening, and that's it. And we have such limited people that are doing these things. The few things that we do stresses us out completely. And you're asking for a mentoring type thing, which is a great ask. And I used to be principal out there, and I know I know your daughter and everybody that you're talking about. But and we have done a field day with the school district out there.
Okay.
But a mentoring program means somebody's at Farpoint, and Farpoint is not occupied. Our Farpoint is, we only are out there basically one time a month for public nights. So we run that whole facility remotely. It's a scientific facility, a high-end scientific facility. And so we don't really do what you're talking about, meeting a group or a kid or a mentoring thing out at Farpoint.
Well, you can do things as a group. You know, and maybe that's mostly introductions and maybe some educational kinds of things. And you mentioned that you do things mostly remotely. You can mentor remotely too.
I'm talking about operating the observatory remotely, not interacting with people remotely. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but
Okay.
can you?
Can we?
Yeah.
Well, unless there's people around the table that want to pick up the slack, I'm just being straight up honest with you.
No,
I want you to really understand what we are currently doing, how taxed the so-called about 6 people are to pull off what we do, and then what you're asking is great intentions. It's just far beyond.
The question.
Yes.
If you are watching this guy remotely, and I understand you can do that.
I'm not watching the sky. I'm tracking asteroids.
Sorry,
I'm the one. I am tracking asteroids.
You're talking to a novice.
Okay. We are tracking newly discovered asteroids and turning
Okay.
the data in.
And you do that remotely.
Yes.
Is it possible to have a person with you?
No.
It's just single.
It's single.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And the other thing too is that, I mean, Dave, he got trained in, you know, it took him a while to learn it, and he really took off with it. And then we've got Gary, who's, you know, his brain is half-assed away. And, you know, years ago, I worked with it a little bit, but to really get good at that, it takes a while. And it takes a commitment. You gotta be out there for a while, learn how everything works and the calculations and how to report. It's a very, and that's pretty much what Dave does
Well,
now.
to tell you what a novice I am, I said, okay, if I pay my $45 due, do I get a key to the observatory?
Well, it takes time, but yes, eventually you can. But it takes some commitment and time.
Right.
And the other thing is right
Well-
now that since we've got, you know, the construction has had something to do. The internet's been the big thing. But we still have like member nights, which have also been clouded out. But that's just when members go out and do their thing. And that's when you can learn things like, do I want to get a telescope? How does it work? What can I see up there? That kind of thing.
Well, I've taken up too much time, and I just wanted to say, you know, I greatly appreciate what you do, number one. I recognize the expertise of this group, and I want to take advantage because my granddaughters are there and some other people's granddaughters, and if there's anything that I can do, I will. And perhaps the simplest thing would be to set up something with Mr. Hancock. And you know Mr. Hancock.
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean,
Maybe,
yes.
or I can bow out of it completely.
No, I understand what you're asking, and I think it is a noble endeavor, and I'm a Lutheran, and I like the
Oh,
mentoring thing and all of that. But if we had 100 people and half of them were actively involved in doing things, then I think we could probably help with sort of mentoring a few older students who can grasp some of the stuff, the high-end things that we're doing, or they want to learn. But right now, we're meeting that need through public nights, people coming out and talking to us.
Okay.
We kind of show our skills a little bit with telescopes and things like that. But I'm just being honest with you, and I'm only one person on the board. We do not have the active membership to complete the thing you're asking. Not because it's not a great idea, it's just, my gosh, we are all that are just actively involved, we are worn out.
Well,
And
then I want to thank you for
Okay.
your time tonight. And I also ask that if you see that black dog, you throw a rock at him.
I love dogs. I love dogs. And I had a couple of the dogs in my office waiting on Sherry to take them home. So
Oh,
yes. No.
Yeah.
So I hope we're not coming across negative to you.
But it is,
I just wanted to explain some reality.
yeah, it is kind of a small group, though. That is one of the realities. All right, well, if no further questions on that, a couple of other things I wanted to kind of point out before we kind of get into the things. I got an email from the Astro League the other day. Apparently they have their new Observer's Handbook out if you want to order a copy of that. There's $27 a piece unless you buy 10 or more, and then they're $26 a piece, so you save a little money on that. I didn't even know what these things are really, but I thought I'd pass that on. This is their website, so if you would like to order a copy of that, I don't know, some of you who are members might have gotten this email, I don't know, but anyway. So there's that. One other thing I wanted to announce. Next Tuesday, there will be a lecture on campus at K-State by Dr. John C. Mather, who is a Nobel Prize laureate and physicist, and I think the project director of the James Webb Space Telescope. He's actually giving two talks. One is the technical talk that the physicists will understand, and one is the general talk that apparently the rest of us can understand. This is the general one, so this will be Tuesday at 4:30, and it's in Cardwell Hall, which I don't know if any of you are familiar with the K-State campus, but Cardwell Hall is the one that has an observatory dome on the top of it, so it should be easy to find. So I'm planning on going to this. I might, if I'm feeling brave, I might go over and listen to the technical talk too, just to see if I remember anything I learned, 40-ish years ago in college. But so this will be something, and I've heard John Mather not talk in person, but talk, and he's very, very interesting. And the only other talk I ever went to by a Nobel Prize laureate was a guy by the name of Leon Letterman, and he was hilarious. I mean, it's one of the funniest things I've ever heard. He told a story about Burger King that would, I still can't drive past the Burger King without thinking about it. But, so I don't know. That doesn't necessarily mean this guy's going to be funny too, but it was a really good talk.
Is he remoting in, or is he?
No, he's here. He'll be here.
He's only going to talk in person for an hour?
Well, he's got to give me two talks.
Oh, okay.
On campus, but then he's visiting the department, and they'll all hang out together and probably talk about physics.
101, I don't know how big that is, but I imagine there's going to be a crowd.
I taught in that room once. It's a pretty good sized room.
Okay.
It's one of those stadium rooms, big room that you're down at the bottom of the bowl, and the crowd is looming over you. Anyway, yeah, I taught in that room once. Anyway, so you might want to consider that. The other thing I wanted to announce, which is never too early to start publicity, is our Christmas party. Our annual holiday party is coming up here, December 2nd. 7 is right, isn't it?
I'm not sure if it's
Is it Saturday?
Yeah, it's a Saturday. It's the first Saturday in December, which I think is typically the day that it is. It's at the same place it ever is, Snyder's Cabin. It's a potluck. Bring stuff to share.
Is that right by the zoo?
Yeah, it's in
on
the
Gage
over.
Park grounds, yeah. It's on the west end, kind of like the west end of the zoo. If you know where the Children's Discovery Center is, it's just a little north of that. Yeah.
We'll send an email out with a map and everything.
Yeah, there'll be
and
plenty.
It's also like a membership drive.
Yeah.
For
Well,
the
yeah,
coming year.
you can sign and get your membership taken care of right there. So.
Yeah, there'll be plenty of other reminders as we go along. But I just wanted to kind of, get this out there because time is marching on. So anyway, any other announcements before we kind of head into other stuff? So what I figured to talk about tonight is two things. So typically what we do, for those of you who are new to the meetings, is we generally have some sort of presentation on the sky, and then we have some presentation on some topic. So Dave has agreed to do the topical presentation tonight, which is on the eclipses. So I thought for the sky presentation, we talk about Aquarius. I usually try to pick a constellation that's coming into view, I guess you could say. So this is one that gets a little more visual as we get, or a little more visible as we get into the fall. So Aquarius. In some ways, it's kind of an underwhelming constellation. It's not very bright. I think the brightest star in the entire constellation is only 3rd magnitude, so it's a fairly faint one. This is actually a view from Stellarium, and this is what the sky will look like at 8 o'clock, at 7:56 tonight, so 20 minutes from now. The moon is going to, it's probably clear enough to see out there. It's going to drown out a lot of this because it's relatively bright, but there's Aquarius right there. It's a lot like a lot of constellations for me, and then it doesn't look a thing like what it's supposed to look like, which in the case of Aquarius, Aquarius is almost always depicted as the water bearer, right? The word Aquarius means made out of water, basically. And it's typically depicted in almost every context as a character carrying water, often like this, right? It's this person holding a pitcher, a jar, spilling it out. In some representations, it's like a river, and then the southern fish is kind of in the river, and it's near this part of the sky that's sometimes referred to as like the sea or the ocean, because there's a bunch of fish and aquatic constellations there. So there's Pisces right there, at least one of the fish of Pisces. It's one of the constellations of the zodiac, right? So it lies along the plane of the ecliptic, the celestial equator. So it tends to be kind of one of the ones that attracts attention from that perspective. The planets, of course, pass through those constellations and all. As I said, it's tends to be kind of a dim one. It's actually not a water constellation. I don't know if anybody follows astrology. Most of us probably don't, but it's not really a water constellation. Because it's not the water, it's the person that it's named after. Anyway, so that's kind of where you would find it, sort of in the south or southeastern sky right about now. I am not a real great at finding things in the sky, to be honest with you. I've gotten a lot better since I joined NECA. It used to be, I knew like 3 stars, which is, considering what I studied as an undergraduate, is kind of scandalous. But since I joined, I've gotten to know things a little better. But people who are good at making their way through the sky, like Jan, can probably come up with a much better way. But this is my way of finding, and I always start with something that I know for sure I can find. And one of the few things in the sky I know for sure I can always find is the Great Square, right? It's part of Pegasus and Andromeda, I think. So the Great Square is pretty easy to find, at least for me. So I find the Great Square, then I use it to kind of move a little bit to the east, and I find the fish head. So this is the head of one of the 2 fish that make up Pisces, right? And they're not very bright either, so finding these is sometimes a little bit of a trick, and especially about now when the moon is drowning them out. But then they point right at these 3 little stars right here, which are very faint stars, but they form this they're actually part of a part of the Aquarius constellation called the water jug, right? It's supposedly what Aquarius is pouring water out of, which how you look at those 3 stars and get a jug out of that is, again, one of those kind of mysteries of pattern recognition. But anyhow, so that's kind of my method of finding, and that's part of Aquarius. And it's a fairly large constellation, right? It covers a pretty big piece of the sky. As I said, kind of dim, but kind of big. So that's my method. If others know a better way, I suppose Capricorn might be a good little pointer too, but I have a tough time finding Capricorn. So
One thing, the easier way to find Capricorn is that one's drawn like 2 little triangles, but if you start up at the point and then you come down to that lower one, and instead of going up for that, connect the bottom of it, and then it looks kind of like a big boat.
okay.
Yeah, that's the way you can draw it. That's a little easier.
So it's going down the stream, I guess.
I have no idea. I mean, what's Capricornus?
Capricorn's a goat, I think.
Yeah, it's a
right?
sea goat.
Yeah, so yeah, that is one thing about the constellations, and actually that kind of enters into the little spiel this evening. Is we kind of, I think for most of us, our intellectual traditions are rooted in Europe, which in turn is rooted in the kind of classical world, right? Greece. So I think we tend to view constellations and sky objects and stories kind of through that lens. But one of the things that is consistent about Aquarius, or the group of stars that more or less are identified as now as the constellation Aquarius, is they've almost always been associated with something to do with water. And this goes back into lots of different mythological traditions. And this little thing right here is a carving on the side of a building that obviously represents a representation of Aquarius. You can see the kind of pouring out. This is also actually somewhat a representation of kind of a Hindu version of this. And then these little squiggly lines over here, those are kind of the representational symbol for Aquarius, and those probably are Egyptian in orientation. So this particular group of stars has been associated somehow with water and water carrying for far before the classical world, right? Far before the Greeks and the Romans and all of that, which kind of suggests to me that, that's a rather unlikely coincidence that, this weird looking group of stars right here is going to look to vastly different cultures like a person carrying a jug, which probably suggests that the chain of causality ran the other way, right? That there were these traditions that carried forward through civilizations, and the civilization that would have been associated with some of these was already ancient when the Greeks came along, it was already way back in time. So this probably suggests that some of the star stories, they may go much further back in time than we might think. And I think we've seen this in a few other guises as well. We've seen that these stories kind of carry through, and it's certainly the case with this particular one. So again, the representation tends to be something along these lines, right? Of character of some sort, a person holding a jug with the stream. This is a representation that kind of shows the stream, the fluvius aquarii, the stream of Aquarius. Coming to the fish, there's the southern fish right there. Fomalhaut is the eye of the fish or something like that, and that's a rather prominent star. It's far brighter than any of the stars that are actually in Aquarius. But they all tend to look something like this, right? Their representations are often very, very similar to this one. Okay, so again, you can kind of see the neighborhood here that this is in. Saturn, by the way, is in Aquarius now. So you want to see Saturn, you look to Aquarius. Well, the moon might be bright enough now to be blotting out a lot of this stuff. But anyway, so again, the point is that this is a constellation that for a very long has been recognized as a constellation for a very long time, and as one that is related in some way to water. It's been recognized as a constellation long enough that it was one of the ones listed in the Almagest, Ptolemy's Almagest. Ptolemy was a scholar in the very ancient world who was polymath, did a lot of work in a lot of areas, but he lists what is now Aquarius as one of the ones. So it's been recognized in its current form since Ptolemy's time. There's a more recent but not recent representation. I believe this one was from the 1300s, a star atlas at that time. And again, you can kind of see there's a constellation here that doesn't exist anymore, La Baleine, the balloon, which is no longer recognized as a constellation. But Aquarius still is. So I guess the point is a pattern of stars that's been recognized for quite some time. It figures prominently in some mythological, some ancient culture myths going back far before Greek times. One of the ones that was pretty prominent was the Babylonian time. And in Babylonian time, what the Aquarius was called or Enka as a later version, but was sort of one of the chiefs of the gods, was the god that brought water and fertility. That was a good part. Also floods and destruction, not such a good part. This was a god of mixed blessings in a lot of ways. But here's a representation. So there's there, and you see, it doesn't show up particularly clearly, but you see these wavy lines coming off. Those are streams. So this god is particularly depicted as having streams flowing out of his shoulders, and those streams are often the headwaters of some of the kind of ancient world here. One of the interesting things that I learned about some years back when I happened to check a book out in the Bible about ancient legends was the legend of, got to put that in there, darn it. The legend of Utnapishtim. Is anybody familiar with this one? Utnapishtim was a Babylonian times, essentially Noah, similar to Noah, right? Was caught up in an ancient flood, built a reed boat, escaped this. It's thought by many people to be a precursor to the Noetic story in the Bible. And it was this God that caused the flood right? So in that particular context, he was kind of the bad guy, basically. The same constellation is recognized in the Hindu world, but it's just the water pitcher that they're really interested in. It's Kumbha, and that is the basis of a very important ceremony in the Hindu culture, of the ceremony of, I believe it's called Kumbha Ita or something along those lines, where pouring of water symbolically out of pitchers is a real part of that, and it's thought to be kind of the spiritual or origination of the Ganges River, which is sacred in the Hindu world. So that's another kind of guise that this constellation appears in, but it's not the person in this case, it's the pitcher that's the important part of it. In Arabic mythology, this is kind of an interesting one, I thought, because so many of the star names you see in the sky are of Arabic origin, and so the Arabic cosmogony is a very important one. And in Arab mythology, it's come to be called the well bucket, but there's sort of an interesting story, because those of you that are on the ball, that's not Aquarius right there. What is that? That's the Great Square, right? That's what's now part of Pegasus. Well, in the Arab mythology, it was called the well bucket, and it was a well bucket, right, attached to a rope. But then, through time, the Arabic mythology on this changed, and they stopped recognizing the well bucket as now what we now think of as part of Pegasus. In fact, they started to think of that as more like a winged animal, right? More like we see the current kind of interpretation of that constellation. And so what was the well bucket, I believe this is called Ad-Dal, has now changed, and it's now become part of Aquarius. So they now recognize that as particularly the pitcher part, the bucket part. So the name has remained the same, but the constellation stars have changed a little bit in how the interpretation has changed, which I guess kind of suggests that maybe these things really aren't written in the sky in a literal way, and one of these days, some point in the future, there may be different interpretations on our current constellations. But of course, the mythology that we mostly associate, I guess, again, the intellectual roots of our thought tend to be centered in the classical world, or formed in the classical world. So we tend to look at the Greek mythology. And the Greek mythology of Aquarius is actually related to another kind of familiar astronomical name, that's Ganymede. Mm-hmm. So Aquarius is kind of, in some ways, the word Aquarius is just a very generic name, right? It just means made out of water or formed of water or something like that. So it's not necessarily associated with a person like some constellations are, like Heracles, which we talked about a couple months ago, is associated with a particular entity, right? Aquarius really isn't. But the story of Aquarius, at least from the Greek mythology, is associated with this character Ganymede. Of course, Ganymede, the name, is also attached to one of the satellites, the largest moon in the solar system. But Ganymede in mythology was a young Trojan man who was, and again, I joke about this every time, but the Greek god and the Greek pantheon was composed of really, really badly behaved, just terrible behavior, right? And in this particular case, Zeus, who is often the ringleader in all this terrible behavior, became rather infatuated with this rather attractive young man, and decided that he would like Ganymede to join him on the mountain, right? And so Ganymede is significant in that respect because it's one of the first in the kind of Greek mythology, the first mortal to be made a god, and was brought into was kidnapped. I mean, one would say he was asked, he was kidnapped. He was kidnapped by an eagle, right? So there's a mosaic of Ganymede being kidnapped by this eagle and brought up to the mountain to join the gods. And the job that he was given was to be the cupbearer, to the gods. And depending on what version you look at, the cup is either water or mead of some kind of nectar, right? But he was and that was a pretty important job because, keeping the gods hydrated was kind of a big deal. So anyway, so that was what Ganymede was brought up to do. And of course, Zeus was quite infatuated with Ganymede, and that did not make Hera, Zeus's wife, who was the goddess of, I think, love and friendship or something, but not a person free of jealousies, we'll put it that way, did not make her very happy. What also made her unhappy about it was that in order to make Ganymede the cupbearer and the hydrator of the gods, they had to fire the existing cupbearer, who also happened to be Hera's daughter. So this did not make her very happy, and she got ample reasons to be pretty upset with Zeus, as we've seen many, many times. But this just seemed to add fuel to the fire. So that was obviously a pretty spicy marriage, to say the least. But anyway, so that's kind of the representation of Aquarius in the Greek world. It's a representation of of Ganymede, the cupbearer, being placed in the sky by Zeus as an honor for basically being handsome, right? And therefore an object of obsession by Zeus. So that's kind of the story of the story behind Aquarius, at least from the Greek perspective. And if you look in the sky, you see the eagle right there. It's also so the eagle and the constellation got to be together in the sky. All right, so
There's
that's
one other thing I wanted to point out. You can do it right here. There is a star in Pisces Austrinus. See that great big one down there? And it's, that one. It's either called Fomolo or Fomalot, and it's fairly bright, and all of the other stars aren't, so it's often called the solitary one or the lonely one. You can see that bright star down there, because it is a real dim area up in there, except for that one star.
I always think of it as the fisheye.
The mouth.
But
The mouth.
yeah, is it the mouth?
Yeah, the mouth.
Fomalhaut is Arabic.
Oh, that just totally changes
How
my
do you
view
pronounce
of
it,
it.
Ed?
Fomalhaut.
You pronounce it Fomalot. See,
Haut means whale.
okay. Yeah, because there's I've seen different pronunciations, and the two I see are Fomalo or Fomalot.
So-
You're saying it's like Fomalot.
So it's whale
Yeah,
and
Arabic
Yeah.
doesn't drop
Arabic?
consonants.
Okay.
Okay. Anyway, I don't know. I always thought of it as the eye, but it's the mouth.
Mhm.
Mouth.
Okay.
It's the mouth, yeah.
I'll have to change my thinking on that. Anyway, so as far as what to see in interesting things to see, again, it's kind of a dim constellation. Its brightest star is actually the Beta star, which normally Alpha is the brightest one, but when they were doing this system, the capability to measure the brightness of stars was still kind of subjective. They didn't have photometry and things like that, and so it turned out, as it sometimes does, that the Beta star was actually a little brighter than the Alpha star when it's measured across in brightness across the spectrum. Anyway, so Beta Aquarii are so-called saddle sued, which means something like bringer of luck, I guess, is what it is. Sometimes, I guess the translation I saw. It's the brightest star in the constellation, and it's also kind of interesting because it is a kind of a rare type of star. It's a G star, which is kind of like the sun, right? But it's a supergiant G star. It's a yellow supergiant, which is a relatively unusual kind of star. So one of these days, when it'll have a life cycle kind of similar to the sun because of the fact that it's in the same spectral class, but it's much larger, much brighter, about the same temperature, right? But much more luminous because it's so much bigger. So it'll have stages of the life cycle kind of like the sun, except over a much shorter period of time. So it's a young star right now, but it won't live as long because that's kind of how stars work, right? The big ones age faster and the small ones age more slowly. So it'll form some kind of a planetary nebula at some point in the future, but it'll be a big and kind of interesting. So it's kind of an interesting star from that perspective. Other things to kind of see, a couple of pretty good globular clusters. One of these is M2 is the second object in the Messier catalog, so it's obviously been cataloged for quite early on. And of course, the Messier catalog was created by a comet hunter who did not want to get false leads, right? So he was trying to catalog things that he wanted people to realize were not comets, and globular clusters, I guess, could be easily mistaken for them. But anyway, it's kind of a nice globular. I always think globular clusters are really cool, and so I never miss an opportunity to look at one. But it's one of the ones that's in the galactic halo. And one of the ways we know how big the Milky Way is and what kind of shape it is there's a halo of these things around it. So if you measure the distance and direction to all of them, you kind of get an idea of where the size of the galaxy is. It's about essentially how we know how big our galaxy is. The other one, M72, it's a little less well defined, and it's not one of the halo globulars, so it a little bit of a different kind of thing. It's still orbiting the galaxy, but not in that halo around the nucleus of it. And it's also one that's got a lot of a kind of an unusual type of star and Lacerda stars in it, so it's interesting from that perspective too. So these are kind of a couple of interesting little globulars that are in there. Some kind of cool galaxies, actually, and in particular, there's two galaxies that are probably associated with collisions at one time. One of them, NGC 7727, is kind of it's just a nucleus, right? It's as if it's like a galaxy that the spiral arms have been sort of lost, or at least dissipated, and it's thought to have resulted from some kind of a collision. And I guess galaxies collide. It's not a particularly unusual thing to happen, right? There's a couple of kind of famous pictures of two galaxies that are going through one another. One of the things I always found interesting about that is that stuff in galaxies is probably so sparsely distributed that nothing will hit each other, right? They'll just pass through each other without any collisions. But that's what speculated is that's what's thought to have happened to NGC 7727. NGC 7252 is also thought to have been the result of the unusual structure of it is thought to have been the result of a collision. It also has probably the weirdest name of any galaxy. It's called the Atoms for Peace galaxy. There's a couple of reasons for that. Apparently it was named back in the early 1950s when there was this thing, and I guess it would have been the Eisenhower administration at that time, the Atoms for Peace initiative. And so partially it was thought to be named that, but also it kind of, at least somebody thought, and I think it shows up a little bit better if you look at a little lower resolution image. It kind of almost looks like the way atoms are depicted in textbooks, a nucleus with an electron around it, So anyway, at least that's the story I read as to why this ended up being called the Atoms for Peace guys. Oh, the other thing that's kind of interesting about NGC 7727 is, oh, wait a minute, no, sorry. Never mind. These are out of order. Sorry. One of the other kind of interesting galaxies is the Aquarius Dwarf, which is actually its official name, right? It's called the Aquarius Dwarf. It's I thought I put the catalog number in here, but apparently I didn't. This is it right here. It doesn't really look a whole lot like a galaxy. It's an irregular galaxy, right? Not all galaxies have the nice pinwheel, spirally, circular structure. Some of them are just blobs of stars. And that's kind of what this one is. But here's what's interesting about the Aquarius Dwarf galaxy. Redshift minus 141 kilometers per second. What does that mean? It means it's blue shifted, right? It's actually getting closer to us. And so again, kind of, we tend to think, well, the universe is expanding, so everything out there is getting further away from us, but that's not the case. And there are things that actually are approaching us. So the Aquarius Dwarf is a member of the local group of galaxies, right? This gravitationally bound, 50 odd, maybe more galaxies. And this particular one is getting a little closer to us. So it's blue shifted. It's an unusual example of a blue shifted galaxy. Nebula, couple of kind of nice ones. A couple of them I picked them because they were pretty. NGC 7009 called the Saturn Nebula. This one was discovered using I think in the early 1800s, using relatively, for what would be a relatively crude telescope. If you see it in that kind of telescope, it really does look like Saturn, right? It looks like, you know, a blurry version of Saturn. It kind of looks like Saturn in a better view, but you can kind of see the resemblance there. But it looked enough like Saturn that it got named the Saturn Nebula. The Helix Nebula, also sometimes called the Eye of God Nebula, is this one. And it's also thought, you know, for popular culture nerds, it's thought to have also been maybe the inspiration. I mean, if anybody had seen the Lord of the Rings movie, you know, and they had the eye up there, it was,
Sauron.
yeah, this might have been at least, you know, the story that you see on these. It might have been part of the inspiration for that. So it may have taken some of its visual cues from the helix. It doesn't look like a helix to me. This is a planetary nebula. This is the remnant of a star that, like, not dissimilar to the sun, that lived out its life and kind of died and puffed out all this gas as it died. So this is the remnant of that. There should be something in the center of it. Maybe that one guy right there. That's kind of the remnant of the star, right? Anyway, so there's the Aquarius dwarf again. Another thing, I'm always interested in exoplanets, one of my favorite things. And one of the kind of famous exoplanet systems is in Aquarius, the TRAPPIST-1 system. What makes it kind of interesting is that there are 7 known planets in the TRAPPIST-1 system, and it's thought that 3 of them lie within the what they sometimes call the habitable zone, although again I think that's kind of stretching that term a little bit, but what it basically means is they lie within, and they're around a red dwarf star, kind of a small, relatively cold star, but I mean relatively cold, but they lie within the region of that where you could potentially get liquid water, right, on the surface, and that's the thing that defines this sort of habitable zone. So,
Another term for habitable zone is the Goldilocks zone.
yeah.
And that's because it's not too hot, it's not too cold, it's just
I like that. I like that term even less
Yeah.
than I like.
It's easier to say than habitable.
Yeah, maybe. So anyway, so that's one of the things. And so finally, to round this out, you know, we have pop culture to talk about a little bit. I don't know, some of us of a certain age may remember this, you know, the song and I remember when I was about 12 years old being taken by my parents to see the musical Hair, which is what this is from, which is probably not the sort of thing you want to take a 12-year-old kid to. But, you know, my parents were in this sort of experimental time. And anyway, so, but what does this mean? What does it mean that the age of Aquarius is dying? And actually, there is astronomy behind this too, and I always like to kind of point that out, right? So, you know, the Earth, and this is also, I think, relevant because we just got done with an equinox, right? So it's all a good time to talk about things related to equinoxes. And in particular, what's called the precession of the equinoxes. So, you know, if you could watch the Earth move for very long periods of time, there's a lot more irregularity to the motion than you might think. And one of the things it does, and this is partially because if you think about the mass distribution of the Earth and, you know, think back to when you learned about moments of inertia, right? There's a kind of an uneven distribution to it, and that causes eventually any kind of motion a wobble, right? So the Earth kind of wobbles like a top as it moves, and that wobble takes place on a precessionary time period of about 13,000 years. So it takes a little time to make a circle, right? What that means is that the rotational axis of the Earth changes its orientation through time. So right now it's pointed almost exactly at the star Polaris, which is why it's the North Star, but it won't always be the North Star, and it hasn't always been the North Star. There was a time when Vega was the North Star, and there'll be a time in the future when some other star is the North Star. Anyway, point of all this is that what that means is, and if you think about what the astronomical definition of an equinox is, it's the time when the sun, the kind of orbital location of the sun crosses the celestial equator, either going up, and that's that's the vernal equinox, the spring equinox, or going down, which is the vernal equinox, which is the one we just went through, right? So when it crosses going up, that's for reasons that are not entirely clear to me, called the first moment of Aries. And it's really kind of the beginning of the astronomical year, right? So that's kind of when the year begins from an astronomical movement point of view. Well, anyway, so that also defines this time that we're in, right? If you think about it from the more kind of, quasi-religious point of view. So right now, the first moment of Aries is in Pisces, and it's about to move into Aquarius. It's right on the edge there. So in one sense, we really are kind of at the dawning of the age of Aquarius, if you want to think about it that way. But I think it's a much better story because it's a much more interesting story to think about what it means for, the astronomy of all of this. Of course, as far as what that's supposed to mean, these are all the wonderful things that we're supposed to have. I would certainly be very happy if we had, harmony and understanding, sympathy and trust abounding or something like that. But I don't really see too many signs of that, but boy, I guess we can hope. So anyway, so that is the story of Aquarius. So, Dave, do you want to...
Yeah, enough of this 60s stuff. Let's get practical and talk about it. No, I always like Doug. He's great and does great presentations. So we're going to get real practical about some of the cool things that are just about to hit us. And boy, are we lucky to be in the United States of America, because in a short period of time, we are going to be experiencing 2 solar eclipses and an annular eclipse. And that's unique in the entire world. So we're lucky to be where we are. So I want to kind of just talk about this, and it's sort of 2 themes. Those of us that are going to travel to go see totality, in a sense, for both of these eclipses, and then those of us that are going to stay at home. And then, given those 2 scenarios, what do I want to think about to take advantage of these pretty much once-in-a-lifetime events? So many of the people in here are similar to my age, and we won't have another totality in our area of the world for another 20-some years. So I will be in my late 80s, and so I'll be lucky if I can hold the applesauce in my mouth. So anyway, this is the time that we want to take advantage of. So Janelle mentioned already, the club got together at the last board meeting and finalized these things, and I'm happy that we have some members of our club that are going to go out and help. We always need as much help as possible. And if you do help, doesn't mean that you're stuck helping for the rest of your life. It's whenever you can help at anything. I've always felt it's a great thing and a wonderful learning opportunity. We have some very smart people in this room right now. In fact, Ed is one of the smartest astronomy people I've ever met. And he has a huge amount of experience with eclipses. And maybe we can get him talking a little bit tonight.
I'm not sure even where the swim beach is.
It is, just to let you know, it's on the east side of Lake Shawnee, and it's just kind of south of the ball fields.
Okay.
There's a big parking lot for the ball fields, and then you go just a little bit further south, almost to the top of the little hill there, and that's the swim beach.
All right.
Okay?
All right.
So I think everybody's got that, and this information will be on our website, and you'll probably get some emails about it just to remind our members. So here's all the eclipses that are happening from 2021 to 2030. This includes annular eclipses, which we'll talk about, and then totality. And if you kind of look at us right here in the North America region, we have 2 that are coming here. This one is a few days away, October 14th. That's less than 2 weeks away. This is the annular eclipse that's coming. And then we have this one that's going this way. Hopefully you can see my cursor. That is the totality one. Now that means we would have 2 total solar eclipses in, let's see, the last one was what, 2017? So in roughly 7 years, we would be able to experience that in the United States of America. You know, you can always see these things on the internet, but to experience them in person is just amazing. And if you can, you definitely want to take advantage of these things, these opportunities. So it's time to plan. So we're 16 days away. That's the current count for October 14th. And luckily it's on a Saturday. Bad for school kids because kids will not be in school on the 2017 total solar eclipse, even though in this area there was a sort of a cloudiness going on. But every now and then there was a break in the clouds, and some schools in Kansas the kids got to see that. But unfortunately it's on a Saturday, which means it falls on the general public to be aware of things. So even though NECAL will be on WIBW and we hold meetings like this, and this is going to hit the news really, really fast, and everybody's going to be, trying to figure it out. But if you hadn't made plans for this, you might be able to get it, but there's still time for the total solar eclipse, which we'll go through, and that's a much bigger show in terms of eclipses than the annular one, and we'll talk about that. It's 193 days away. There still is time to get specialized equipment, to get hotel reservations and stuff like that, make travel plans, maybe you want to camp out, stuff like that. We'll go through that. So the question comes down is, what do you want to see, a little or a lot? And by a little or a lot, up here at the top, these are images of the partiality of an eclipse. So this is what you'll see in the Kansas area, northeast Kansas right here, about these top 4 images here, along with these bottom 4. If you want to get to the center part here, and this is the total solar eclipse, the annular one looks a little different, but if you want to get to the best part of the show, you have to go directly to where the moon shadow is coming across Earth. And here's what we've got. So we'll get more specific with this, and it's hard to pick out the states, but this top one here is the 2017 total solar eclipse. It went right through northeast Kansas. And when I was principal up at Mission Valley, I took our high school physics class, and we got in 2 vans, and there was a NECAL caravan. They were all heading up northeast. We had picked a spot. I was a little more fluid with my high school kids in the vans, but I looked at cloud patterns and predictions and just got lucky, and we sat in the park up at Bern, Kansas, and got to see it under clear skies. And that was the first time I had ever experienced something like that, and I am still in awe of experiencing that total solar eclipse without super expensive equipment. Just, it goes dark, and what happens when it goes dark, and I just had some basic equipment, so it was quite amazing. So let's sort of raise hands. Who saw 2017 total solar eclipse? Okay, so almost half the people in the room have experienced a total solar eclipse. Okay, who has seen a total solar eclipse other than the 2017? Okay, so Ed, real quick, tell us about you. I know you have a lot of experience in the Middle East.
Well, this was in 1971.
Uh-huh.
And I was, I think, a sophomore at the university, and about 4 of us who had too much else going on anyway got an old car, drove to southern Mexico, 2 or 3 auto accidents, and
so you saw it in Mexico?
In southern Mexico, yes.
Oh, wow.
It was in March.
Neat.
It was
Did you have a telescope and all
Yes, we
that?
had telescopes. We took some pictures. I still have some pictures of it.
So in the 70s, the photography available to people back then is nowhere near to the photography that's available now.
An old
at pretty reasonable cost.
Yeah,
Um,
color film,
Yep.
Ektachrome.
Okay. Next, I think the guy behind Ed raised his hand. Go ahead.
I made a mistake, I may have been an annular. 'Cause I
You saw an annular eclipse?
When I was young, I
Okay.
remember it got really dark.
Okay. So we're going to talk in a second. What does an annular eclipse look like compared to a total solar eclipse? Anybody else eclipsing?
Yeah, back in the, like late 70s,
1979.
79, yeah, I was in high school.
Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, it looked like, I'm not so sure, but Horton, Kansas, my hometown, was like totality.
Oh, it went through Kansas?
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Anybody else? Russ saw 2017. Did
I
you
saw
see
17.
2017?
I just happened to find a nice, somewhat clear spot in Nebraska.
Right. So, look where these lines are intersecting. Everybody talks about down in Texas being the sweet spot. That's where the annular, this is the annular line. It's coming down here from Oregon down to Texas. The totality one is going from Texas up to Maine. They move from west to east. But they say, well, that's cool. That's a sweet spot. But look at this other sweet spot. Right here in this area, these people have experienced 2 total solar eclipses in a few years. In the area, I think it's Illinois, an area like that. That is just amazing to me and how lucky they are for that. Okay, so this slide I'm just showing to illustrate what the shadow is looking like. The shadow is coming, we all know the sun's out there, and the moon is in the middle between us and the sun. And we're lucky, just amazingly, nature made the moon and the sun about the same size, about a half a degree, so that when they get this perfect alignment, we get totality, or what's called the ring of fire. I think that's just amazing that all these bodies in space moved around just right for us to experience that as humans on this. So you'll notice that the one on the left is more elliptical. Circles are ellipses, I know, but it's got a long axis and a minor axis. So imagine shining a really bright flashlight in my hands here. If I held it perfectly down to the table, I would be making a circle with that beam of light. But if I tilted it over here, then I don't have a circle anymore. I have that oval elliptical shape. And that's why you have that. Now, people are trying to find the center line of that shadow. So imagine a bunch of ovals going across here. They represent points in time. So if I'm following this oval shadow, if I'm right here, I'm only seeing this much of total darkness for the, let's say, totality. Angular doesn't get totally dark. But if I'm in the center of the football, let's say, I have this entire length of time to experience that perfect alignment. And that's what people are trying to get to. So that's where you can see like maybe 3 to almost 5 minutes on the annular. It's not the same amount of time as it is in Oregon as it is in Texas. Oregon is shorter, Texas is longer, but that's why people are trying to find these center lines. So, oops, sorry, I'm zooming in here. This is an annular eclipse. The moon is at its farthest distance from Earth. So it is smaller for us compared to when there is a total eclipse. The moon is closer and it is totally covering the sun. So the moon on annular is farther away, so it does not completely cover the sun. We get what's called the ring of fire. So the difference in terms of safety is with this, you still have a lot of sun shining through. It's not going to be dark, but you still have sun shining through, and they say you still should be looking through your eclipse glasses at this. It's still, the sun is like ultimate brightness, and even though you've got that ring, you don't want to be staring at that, so you need to have eye protection all the time during the annular. And it'll also, the safety glasses will dim things enough so that you can really see the detail of the eclipse, compared to, see how blurry that is? You don't see tight edges and things like that. So I already went through this. It's at its furthest point away. That's why we don't have total coverage of the sun. We have the ring. This is an example of right here. Our annular is actually, the shadow is starting way out here in the Pacific Ocean. And then it's coming down through here, and it's going all the way down into Brazil. You'll see different shades of colors, and those represent a percentage of coverage. So way up here, if I was wanting the annular here on the 14th, Maine is still going to see a little bit of the moon covering up the sun. Nothing like what we might see in Kansas, which is going to be about 65%. But as you get closer and closer to that center line, that's when you're getting as best coverage as you can. The one going this way is the total. So, as we can see here, this is a graphic. Here's where you want to be. This is the shadow, and then everything else is a percentage of coverage of the sun. So if I'm in Denver, I'm going to get about 80% coverage. If I'm in Omaha, I'm going to get about 60. So Kansas, Topeka, right about here, we're looking at about 64%, and I'll show you some websites that will give you the exact percent coverage on Google Maps, and you can figure out where you're at and stuff like that, or where you want to be. Annular eclipse. The word annular sort of makes you think like this happens every year, but actually it doesn't. It happens within 1 or 2 years. And I put this in here just as an example. So here's October 14th. The next one, and this is global, by the way. This is where their coverage is about a year away, but notice the difference between here and here. It's more than 1 year. So it's close to about 1.5, I think, or I'm not good with my months, about a year and a half. So it happens every 1 to 2 years on the planet, an annular eclipse. So here's our ring of fire. Now, the ring of fire has an added feature. As the moon is coming over and covering up and moving to this center spot, the edge of the moon is going to get close to the edges of the sun. The moon, if you had never looked at it, has lots of mountains and valleys. They make the mountains and valleys of Earth look like little Kansas hills. And it is these mountains and valleys that you get these little so-called diamonds of the sun shining through. And they're called Bailey beads. Some people call them little diamonds or some. But you could see this if you have your glasses on or some solar telescope with a solar filter. But it's going to be very fast. It's going to appear and then disappear, especially on this annular eclipse. And all of you experts in here, if I'm saying anything wrong, just jump right in, please. Okay, so I went to the Google Maps website, and I put 4 helpful websites on a piece of paper for people, and we can pass these around, and you can at least have something to take home. I know you can do a Google search on this stuff, but I found these to be pretty neat. So this is an example, and I'll show you this website, but you can click on, you can zoom in on Google Maps and click on a location. For example, we could zoom in to Mission Valley High School, go out to Farpoint, click on the building at Farpoint, and we would get this information for Farpoint Observatory. So I'm sure everybody has like gone to Google Maps and found their house and all that stuff. You could do exactly for this, and the math is all figured out. There is one thing to pay close attention to, or you're going to miss the eclipse, is that this right here, this time right here, is universal time. And universal time is not central time. I think it's 6 hours difference right now.
No, it's 5 hours right now.
Have we moved to 5?
No, not yet. It's 6 when it's still daylight savings time.
No, it's 5 when it's daylight time. It's 6.
Whichever way.
It's 5.
Okay, it's daylight savings time.
It's 5 when it's daylight saving
Yes,
time,
right.
and it's 6 when it's not daylight
That's
time.
right.
So in November or whatever, that will go back to
Whenever
standard
they
time.
decide to do it.
Okay, so
You're right.
the eclipse is in October. So as you leave this meeting, the consensus is you want to subtract 5 hours from this time. So at 15:23 is when the eclipse is supposed to start, about where my house is. So it's take away 5 hours. It's going to be 10:23:55 is when the moon is just going to start moving into the sun. So there's the time. I did do the math, so you're right, 5 hours. So 63.5% coverage for Topeka area. So let's say we're going to travel. So if you're going to travel for the annular, I'm traveling. Who's traveling in here?
I have to work that day. Traveling to Lake Shawnee.
Oh, Lake Shawnee.
It's a short trip.
Okay, well, Russ and I hadn't planned on this, but we are actually both, I don't think we're going to do it together, we're going to go to Santa Fe, New Mexico. So, if you kind of want to pick this as a center point and do a radius of a circle, you know, if you were to do a radius of a circle here, Santa Fe is about as close as we can get. Now, this is as the crow flies, not how the highway goes. And I'm not sure how Russ is getting there. I'm going to Denver first, spend time with family, and then I'm going to come down to Santa Fe. So, if you're traveling, or you know somebody's going to travel, or you change your mind and say, hey, I'm going to go for it, it's a Saturday, I'll be back at work on Monday, I'm just going to sleep in my car. Four Corners in Kansas, the Four Corner area is sort of a unique spot. I did see on Facebook, I'm following several Facebook groups that are on the annular and the total. What's really unique about it is how many people have property on these shadow lines, and they're saying, hey, bring your trailer over here. It's only $500 a night, because all the hotels and all that are pretty much booked up, especially for the annular. And I know I'll bring it up later, but don't want to make any kind of reservations that's not cancelable, because you could have cloud cover, and you don't want to get stuck with a bill, because most people will let you cancel. So anyway, the Four Corner area, that monument is closed on that day. I saw in a Facebook group, if anybody knows anybody going down there. So here's Santa Fe, just an example of my planning. I'm not sure what Russ's planning is. So we have Santa Fe here. I could sit in Santa Fe and enjoy the eclipse, but you'll notice that if you follow this line down here, I'm only going to get probably a little over 2 minutes of the Ring of Fire. And I want more than that. So I'm going to get in a little tighter here. And here's Santa Fe. So I haven't driven any of these roads, but I'm kind of thinking Santa somewhere down in here, there's 4 minutes and 40 seconds. Now, I'm not really worried about missing 10 seconds or anything like that, but I do know two things. I don't want to be around a bunch of people. Okay? So I don't want to go to Roswell, New Mexico. Although that's probably going to be a pretty cool place to see the eclipse. I don't want to go down there. But I don't want to be so isolated that if my car breaks down, I'm out there a week later going, hello, is anybody going to be driving this road? So we'll have to kind of think through it a little bit more. But this is, excuse me, an example of trying to get close to that center
What
line.
equipment are you taking?
Which route?
What equipment are you gonna go down?
Oh, some of this stuff here is what I'm going to show you.
Oh, thank you.
Texas is the sweet spot. My oldest son lives in Austin, and he's the backup plan if there's clouds. So let's talk about the total one coming up. The total one is the big show. If you can get to it, it's certainly worth it. The next one that hits the United States is in 2039, but it's only touching way up in Alaska, and I don't know a whole lot of people that are going to be driving up to Alaska. However, we do have one hitting our area August 12th, 2045. So 2045, is that about 22 years from now? So I'm going to be 65 in a few weeks, so that'll make me 87. I'm diabetic, overweight. A little iffy on that one. And so some of you are going, I'm going to be even worse than that, Dave. So this, if you want to see it for real, not on computers and stuff, this is your chance to see it. And it's going to be pretty close. I mean, Garden City's going to get it, and Denver's going to get it. So it's going to be. So people like Russ, and maybe, I don't want to jinx anybody, I'll say everybody in the room will be around here. Can hopefully see that one. Okay, so the total one, let's kind of look and see what we've got here. We have Texas, it's hitting Oklahoma. It's going through Arkansas, it's hitting the Butte, Missouri, it's going up into Illinois.
Dave,
Yes,
back on that slide,
yeah.
it goes, and it looks like time-wise, it goes from 10:35, 10:40, 11:45?
Yes,
Am I missing something, or?
Changes time
It
zone.
changes.
Time zone, thank
Mountain
you.
Central, yeah.
yeah. Good catch, everybody. Time zone. Yeah. Yeah, see, it's mountain time, and then it goes central time. Thank you for paying such close attention to my slides. So here we have, it looks like the bottom half of Illinois. And they're getting, at best, looks like 4 minutes, 6 seconds. I imagine it's going to be super crowded in that area of Illinois. Chicago's pretty close there, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a long.
So you got Dallas. Texas is big, but the good thing about this is it's a school day, and there's going to be a lot of kids in school, and maybe they can see some of this stuff down in Texas. Texas is a good place, not a lot of clouds. So hopefully they'll see that. My son's in Austin, so he lives here, but if I have to hit that, I'm going to be going to get as best as I can, which looks like about 4 minutes, 20-some seconds. Here we have the Butte, Missouri, and I lost, as I'm zooming in, I lost focus. Can't really tell. Looks like about 4 minutes in that area.
Cape Girardeau is what you're viewing?
Yeah,
It's like right in the middle.
yeah. So what is that, Poplar Bluff, Missouri there?
Yes, looks like it.
And Arkansas, there are, in my Facebook groups, I mean, Arkansas and Texas seem to be the prime locations where people are saying, hey, we're a campground, here, bring your fifth wheel, bring your trailer, bring tents, whatever, and having it. And less sparsely populated, so Arkansas could be a really good place and not too far to drive. So let's talk about safety. You don't have to have super expensive stuff. to observe these things. Just being there is a treat in itself. So we all know about these. If you have your Eclipse glasses from 2017 and you didn't put them in a baggie or something like that, they're in a junk drawer, you're going to want to make sure that nothing scratched that Mylar covering. So hold them up to a really bright light and kind of see, are you seeing any speckling or anything like that? Because we definitely don't want any problems with our eyes later on. There is a whole lot of counterfeit eyeglasses being sent out. This was an issue in 2017. A lot of them coming from China and stuff like that. So the two websites at the top of the piece of paper that I passed around are very reputable people to buy glasses from. And you can buy them 1 or 5 or 10 or 100. They still have them. Russ exposed me to this because Russ is an amazing young man and he likes making stuff. Last year I bought some of this solar filter sheets, which is exactly the same thing that you might find on a solar filter for a telescope. And these aren't made, but I have some bigger binoculars, and I made a device on each end, and I put the Mylar on them, and they worked great. Just made a little cardboard, little cups, held them in there, and it worked out real good. And Russ, you did it for your telescope, or?
And binoculars.
And binoculars.
Camera.
Yeah, and the camera.
Yeah.
So these are not expensive at all. If you're buying the pre-made products, as close as we are to these Eclipses, you're looking at least probably $50. I looked at for cups on the end of 10 by 50 binoculars, and ones that I would trust, they were roughly about 50 each. So, and that was on Amazon. But for me, if I could see it better than just, with the little cheapo things, it might be worth the $100 or the $50 just for that experience. These are solar binoculars. This is not the brand I have, but Lunt makes great ones. So these are made by Mead, and all these really are is just regular binoculars, but they have made protection on the end of them, and they can just come off and come on. So I'm going to let you look at them. I don't mind you looking at them, but please don't undo and expose the film on them and stuff. Right now, those I think are about $50, $60, which isn't bad considering how many people are buying them. This right here, I think Janelle has one of these. It's called a sun spotter. I've had mine for about 25 years. And it's one of the coolest things I own because what it does is it projects the sun onto this piece of paper down here. And it's called Sun Spotter because the original idea was, and I used it this way, is for when I taught math before I became a principal. Actually, when I was a principal, I did this. We would put a circle, the sun shines down here, and you could see sunspots. Yeah. And we would track sunspot movement every day. So kids, I would be shocked if you could go to any school and ask them about sunspots, and kids would know that the sun rotates and the sunspot is moving. And right now we're in some really neat sunspot activity. So you can watch this. So the sun comes through this little hole right here, bounces around, and it magnifies its size so that it projects a nice clear circle down here. This is totally safe, and it's going to be a great way, you can look at that and the diagram on the back. It's going to be a great way to look at the eclipse. Now, right now, I think best price I could find right now is about $550. I don't know if you were to leave here today and go and order it, if you'd get it by the annular, but you certainly would for the total. And they resell very easily. So anyway, they're really a lot of fun to have. I also have this. I bought this for 2017. This is a special, the PST stands for Personal Solar Telescope. It's a telescope that has built-in solar protections. And this little scope here has a hole on the bottom where it can mount onto a tripod. And you just buy any cheap tripod, and you usually I just have manual controls that I can move this scope this way, and I just follow it along. And I got mine for less than half that price, but right now their prices are expensive because of the popularity of them. But it is a really neat thing. But one of the downsides of astronomy is you only can do it at night. But with this kind of equipment, it exposes your kids, your grandkids, it exposes you to a part of astronomy that's during the day. And you don't have to be up all night to do this endeavor. So filters, you can still find them now. Thousand Oaks is a very reputable company. There's a few others out there, but this is the kind that would go on the end of a telescope. You do not want to buy eyepieces that are the filters. That's dangerous because the sun is coming through your scope, magnifying, and then it's hitting that eyepiece with a lot of heat and intensity. And those are not the kind of, you do not want to buy eyepiece solar filter protection. You want the protection to be on the front end of your scope. If your scope has a finder on it, you want to cover that finder up or take it off. Because I have heard stories and read stories of people looking through their scope, forget about the finder while it is burning a hole through its clothes and skin and everything else. Because it's just a magnifying glass, and we all know you can start fires with magnifying glasses. So you want to be careful of your finder. You can have welder helmets. I know there are different shades, and what I've read is you have to have at least a shade 12 for proper protection on this. I know you can even buy, you don't have to buy the whole helmet, you can just buy the little rectangular shade and look through it that way. But so I'm hearing, reading that it should be 12 or higher. So special notes, these are things I've been thinking about as I'm planning. Be prepared for car or truck troubles. So imagine the amount of people out on the road, and then how many calls for tow trucks or change my tires. You could be like number 5,632 on the list for help wherever you might be going. You want to arrive to your spot early. If you're thinking about it, other people are thinking about it. So you want to get there early enough. And something I've thought, that if I'm out in New Mexico, out where I think I'm going to be, I'm probably not going to get cell service, and I won't be able to pull up my map, so I'm going to have to print out some maps so I can know where I'm going and things like that. Lawn chairs, shade, water, snacks, restrooms. I even bought myself a little portable potty out here, so I'm going to cover myself up in a blanket and do my business out there.
Something for the maps though, if you use Google Maps on your phone, there is a way to download local map area for where you're at, so you can still see it even if you don't have cell service.
Great.
So you just have to look in the options for it. You can find that in there.
Double check your equipment, make a list so you don't leave anything behind. If you're like me, it's usually a freaking cable that I forgot. Do practice rounds. So I'm pretty sure Russ is going to be doing some photography work. I don't know if I am. But, and you could even be doing it here. you guys can take some images here. They just would be partial eclipse, but they'd be very cool. Do some imaging you want to practice before, because you're taking images of the sun. I'm sure there's some camera settings, even if you're using a regular camera or an astrophotography camera. Make sure you have backup sites B and C. So I'll be checking cloud cover predictions pretty quick here. And I'm going to show you a website that helped me with the 2017 is this one. It's called Clear Sky Charts, and this is one of the links when I send out to you guys asking for help for public nights. I include this website. You may not know that these squares right here, especially on cloud cover, you can click on that and it takes you to that location and you can see the cloud cover. Now back in 2017, this was accurate enough that I could tell that a little spot like that, Bern, Kansas, was going to be open. So these are real satellite images and projections. So this has been very accurate for me, and you can pan this and put this in motion and stuff like that. You can get to this. Russ has a link on the NECAL website, and I can pull that up real quick. And it is, where, Russ?
Scroll down.
Scroll down. Oh, here it is. So this area right here on our website has, there's clear outside, and then sky clock, is that what we're looking at?
It's that big blue thing.
Is that it, Russ?
Yeah.
Okay, so see how the familiarity of all these squares I just showed you? So if you click on that, it'll take you to Farpoint Observatory. Now you can change that location, and it doesn't have to be Farpoint Observatory. For example, I could change it to Albuquerque, New Mexico, and see the cloud cover predictions for Albuquerque, New Mexico, out for what, about 3, almost 4 days. Don't go to the beginning. Okay. Like I said, I don't want to be around others because I don't want a whole bunch of people coming over and wanting to use my equipment. And here I am at the Ring of Fire with 10 people around me, and I can't even find my binoculars because somebody stole them, for example. So those are things I'm paying attention to. On the annular, remember, Ring of Fire, you still got a lot of sun shining through, so you need eye protection there. When you get to totality for the total solar eclipse, only at totality, and you'll know when that happens, you don't need the eyeglasses for that. That's where you'll see the corona coming off the sun and all of that. That's pretty special, so you don't want to look through glasses. I am hearing, and I looked on future sky charts, for the next total solar eclipse in April, when it gets dark, in the total solar eclipse, it'll be dark. There'll be some.
Bye.
The library will close in 15 minutes. If you need to copy or print documents, please do so now. Children needing to call home for a ride can do so at the customer service desk. Thank you.
There'll be some planets out, I think Saturn or Jupiter or both, and there's supposed to be a comet out. They don't. Last I read, they don't know if you can see it naked eye, but you certainly could see it with binoculars. Did you have something, Ed?
Not really, no. Planets will be visible if
Right.
they're in the sky at all.
Yeah, so
I
imagine,
mean, if you can see Mercury on the far side of the sun, it'll be there.
right, yeah. So there'll be, I think there's about 5 planets, Mercury and others. And imagine total solar eclipse,
White stars.
Oh, yeah.
got the planets, and a comet. And you can see it through binoculars. I mean, come on. Doesn't get any better than that.
Come on, clear sky.
Anyway, the last one, pinhole projection is another way, especially with kids, and you may not want, they don't want to wear glasses, but even for this. So, being diabetic and overweight, I bought the big size Pringles to risk my body for you guys. On this end here is aluminum foil, and I just took a thumbtack and I poked a hole in it. I kept the plastic here to kind of protect the film. And then on the inside, I cut this out, and then I put some white cardboard here. You could use black cardboard too. And it'll project the sun through the pinhole down here. So once you get it lined up, you can see exactly what this big sunspotter is showing. It's smaller because there's not much length here. I would say if you want to put 2 Pringle cans together and maybe adjust it a little bit, the image at the back here will get bigger. I use cardboard boxes too with the 2017. I had a really long box and it wasn't big, but just a pinhole, and it shined down at the bottom of the box, and it was really cool. It was dark in the box and you could see it. There are pictures where people will take their hands and lace them and hold it up, and the eclipse will shine through down on the concrete, and you'll see a bunch of little eclipse images down there. If you have a colander, like spaghetti strainer, and they have a hole, hold that out, and you'll see a whole bunch of eclipse images down there.
Many years ago, there was one downtown, it was a partial, and I was working downtown, there was a tree there, and there were hundreds of them. You could just see
Right,
them.
and they'll shine through the leaves of the
It'll do a lot of
tree.
things, yeah.
And those are cool to take a picture of just that on the sidewalk. I've seen where people will take a mirror, like go to Home Depot, and they have the little square mirrors they use for like putting on a wall decorations. And if you're at the right place, you can get the sun to shine down, the eclipse shine down, hit the mirror, and shine it across maybe on the neighbor's garage door. You'll have a nice big eclipse image there for a lot of people to see. And that could work at a school or neighborhood party or anything like that, maybe out at the lake that you're at. So those are some ideas. If anybody wants this one, you can grab it, and I'll have another can of Pringles for sacrifice. So anybody have any comments, anything they want to add, any helpful advice? Jump right in.
Sounds good. That sounds like you're ready.
Mentally ready. I don't know if I'm ready for the drive.
Let us know.
Huh?
Let us know next month.
Yeah. Well, cool.
The questions?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jay.
Oh, wait a minute. I forgot. I'm sorry. Just give me 1 second. I forgot those websites. The website's at the bottom. Okay, so this is the annular one. See how it's coming here? This is just a regular Google map. So I can come here and zoom in. And wherever I click,
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's cool.
so Mission Valley is right about there. So there's your information. Take a screenshot, and there's what you need for that exact location.
That's
So
on Google Maps.
it's a Google Maps. So at the very bottom, there's a link for the annular one, and then there's a link for the total one. They look exactly the same. You can tell which one it is. Okay, so this, how do you know which one this one is? Starts in Texas and goes up to Maine. So is this the total or annular?
Total.
This is the total one. So this is the one in
The big one.
April. This is the one you got time to get ready for. Okay? So these are really cool websites. It does the exact same thing. Okay?
That's cool.
Yeah, it's a really neat website, and it's getting it's been available for a while, and as far as I know, I mean, it was mentioned in Sky and Telescope website, so accuracy, I'm sure is good. All right? Well,
All right. thank
maybe
you.
when we meet again, we'll have some good stories.
Okay.
And everybody
All right,
sign
next
up.
meeting is October 26th.